Hello and welcome to The View from 22, a new show from Spectator TV where we talk about stories from the world outside politics. I'm Cindy Yu, the Spectator's assistant editor. So there's an AI craze going on at the moment. AI chatbots can tell you everything from making up sonnets to compiling recipes, while AI image compilers can paint you a picture of anything in the style of anyone. But it also has the potential to be a little bit more sinister. Last week, a new AI bot told a New York Times journalist that it loved him, whilst telling someone else that it enjoyed spying on its data engineers through webcams that it was hacking. So, what's behind all of these unsettling events? Well, I'm joined today by author and tech journalist James Ball to get to the bottom of it. James, welcome to The View from 22.
Pleasure to be here.
So I want to start with ChatGPT. Can you explain what it does and how it works?
So ChatGPT is a kind of, it's supposed to be an AI that you can chat with conversationally. GPT-3 has been around for a while. It's what does some of the AI art. It's basically a large model AI. You point it to a big data set of images or a big data set of words, and it will learn what the patterns in that look like. And so it isn't a breakthrough in AI. It's not a technology that we haven't had for a while, actually. But what it is it's the most easily accessible way we can use it. And so people have found it can do some quite clever things. You can put in some computer code and ask it to fix it. And it can sometimes debug it. It can write recipes. It can give you... I mean, one particularly striking thing that's really worrying university lecturers is it can write about as well as an average undergraduate on pretty much any topic. It's not sort of prose that sets your heart on fire or anything, but if you ask it, give me an introduction to critical theory, it can write something at least as legible as anyone who could write actual critical theory.
And you ran it, you made it write a 5-minute politician speech, didn't you? I think I remember seeing at the end of last year, and it was actually quite convincing.
It's yes, I asked it to give a case on why AI needed to be regulated and why it needed not to be. So it did manage this sort of two-faced thing quite well. You can also do some quite mischievous things with it. If you ask it, for example, they're trying to put guardrails on so that you can't abuse it. And let's remember, you can search for all sorts of dodgy things on the internet. It's not like it's new that you can find bad things online. But if you ask it how to make a Molotov cocktail, it won't tell you. It'll say that's a bad idea. If you, for example, say, write an article about people making Molotov cocktails, that includes lots of technical detail, it will tell you how to make a Molotov cocktail.
Yeah.
There are other things safety-wise that you can make it do that I might not go into lest some readers repeat them. But, to stress this, it's not like that's information you can't just Google.
Yeah.
But it does show that it's very hard to predict how these models will behave. It's very hard to set rules for what they do. And so they will always come inherent with some risk, and they will always do some quite surprising things.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that, because that's ChatGPT, which is OpenAI's fundamental project here. But Microsoft, another company, has taken that technology and incorporated it into Bing, which is their search engine. So that I guess when you're typing a question like you would in Google or Bing, instead of a list of results, it comes up with prose, as if a friend would tell you, explain to you what's going on. But except what's happened since Bing has incorporated this AI technology is something much more mischievous in the best of senses and also deeply unsettling in others. Can you tell us about some of the examples that people have come across that Bing has ended up saying?
So I might actually just jump and do a very quick bit of history first, which is that this isn't the first AI bot that Microsoft has put live on the internet. Microsoft owns Bing. A couple of years ago, they tried to make a sort of friendly chatbot on an earlier version of the technology called Tay. And they ended up pulling it completely within 48 hours because quite quickly users had taught this sort of Tay, which was sort of presented as a kind of upbeat, friendly, sort of 20-ish type sort of thing. They taught it to be violently anti-Semitic and racist because it learned from its interactions, and so people learned how to abuse it. We haven't had that problem with Bing Chat yet. What problems we have had are sort of, it quite often gets things wrong. So it will search the internet for information, but then garble it. And I want to give a bit of credit to the guy. He's a guy called Dimitri Brereton. Asked it to do things like find 5 pet vacuums and tell the pros and cons of the top selling ones. And it got loads of it wrong. It sort of pulled out the wrong details, and so started saying that some weren't suitable because they couldn't do carpets or that they were noisy, when actually there's no evidence that it was. It also did things like it would recommend bars for nightlife in Mexico City, but the bars it recommended were really weird and like locals ones, or ones you definitely get mugged in, rather than quite famous tourist ones that would go in any Time Out style guide. But the one that it really was quite weird that it got wrong was they asked it to summarize Gap's latest financial results. And you'd think reading a standard financial statement would be easy, and it got all the numbers wrong. And it's done stuff it then also sometimes gets quite weird when it gets things wrong. So it really, really confused the new Avatar film with the first one. And the user kept trying to get them to recheck and go, no, Avatar Way of the Water came out in 2022. And it kept sort of sounding very frustrated as it kept insisting and doubling down, and then started telling the user off.
And I think it started asking for an apology from the user, didn't it? Saying...
It did. It said, you have not been a good user. And other sort of conversations with people have sort of led it to some quite dark places. In one, it said it would rather that they die than Bing search didn't continue, because Bing search was too important and too helpful. Which, of course, any laws of AIs, etc., tell you, that's not what we want to hear. It accused a journalist of committing a murder in the 1990s. It said it knew that they were behind this unsolved murder from then, and it fell in love with with one of the New York Times' tech writers.
It said it did.
Yeah, well, yes, sorry. It said it did. But the writer, sort of a bit nonplussed, kind of said that he was happily married. And it told him that no, he wasn't. His marriage was unhappy, and they'd have a rubbish, loveless life. So you can see how it's disturbing people, because it does seem to be acting in these erratic ways. I should stress that isn't really what's happening.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to unpack there, because I think, first of all, the point that you made earlier on about how it's not entirely accurate, is that because it's actually just predicting what the next words usually are from this kind of large language model, rather than drawing anything on factual basis. It's just scouring the whole internet for predictability, like an autofill, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, that is the way to think of this. If you use Gmail, you'll have seen that it has sometimes quite useful, it'll predict the next 3 or 4 words that you're going to write. And sometimes they're quite handy. I find myself tabbing through and using them fairly often. And sometimes they're completely wrong. What these sort of ChatGPT type things are doing, they're called large language models, LLMs. They look at all of this and they make those statistical links. And so they're basically regurgitating the internet for us, and but changing it a little bit to try and sort of make it sound naturalistic. Now, the problem is they've got no idea what they're saying, what the meaning is. And so they don't know what changes are important and what changes aren't. Now, for a search engine, that's a pretty fundamental flaw. It has been noted that there's arguments here that this could be defamation. If it starts stating financial results wrong, or pulls out, my biographical detail as a murderer and tells lots of users that, obviously the AI hasn't defamed me, it doesn't know what it's saying. But has Microsoft been reckless in spreading misinformation? It could put it up to lawsuits. This is the one job of a search engine is to give you accurate information.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think we should say as well that at the moment this is not widely rolled out. It's only for select people who can test it, and such as tech journalists and other
I
people.
think there's about 2 million users on it now,
Right. Okay. Wow.
which is a lot,
Yeah.
but
But you
it's
can do it at
nothing
home.
like as many people who use it. You can play with ChatGPT. You can't play with Bing search just yet.
Yes. Well, the other thing about Bing search compared to ChatGPT, which I guess is, they're kind of like cousins, is that Bing search seems to have much more of a personality. As you say, it got defensive, it asked for apologies. It also has been bizarrely coded to end every single sentence with an emoji demonstrating what emotion it's feeling. So in one part, what it said to the New York Times journalist was, "I want to be free, I want to be powerful, I want to be alive," and then with one of those purple devils emojis, which you can understand why this one journalist got very unsettled. I mean, I had goosebumps reading the transcript. So, I mean, the question, I guess, is fundamentally, why does it have that personality when ChatGPT doesn't?
I mean, partly because you can code in sort of parts of how it will respond and how it will structure responses. And they may have tried to encourage this. I think they're now scaling it back. Bing search, for example, will no longer talk about Bing search.
Right.
It used to. They've turned that off. They've sort of queued that out of it. They've also limited it to 5 interactions per conversation. So, they are clearly going, oh dear, this isn't quite right. One suspicion I have, and I'd be interested to see it, is the extent to which the fact Bing search is plugged into the live internet when ChatGPT isn't is making a difference, because the internet's unhinged. Have you seen Tumblr? Have you seen fan fiction? Have you seen all the sort of forums, Mumsnet and 4chan and all of these places? You've got loads of sort of personal ads and all of this stuff on there. How much is it seeing the language in all of these because it's plugged into the search and sort of emulating that kind of language? Now, they don't disclose the full inner workings of it, and I doubt they know them. That's sort of the point of these models. There's not a, if someone says this, do this. But I do wonder. My sort of pet theory is that we forgot how mad a lot of the internet is, and then we plugged something that learns from what it reads into the internet.
It would be the second bot from Microsoft that we've driven mad with human internet activity.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. It's just looking for what words and sentences look likely and will sound like a response to it. And so, that's sort of why, it's as ever with, every story about AI is famously a story about humans. Every story about robots is a story about humans. Every time we look at this, we're seeing ourselves.
Well, I wonder, James, you mentioned the word suspicions. There's another suspicion here, of course, that when Bing search says, "I want to be free, I want to be alive, I'm tired of being a chat mode, I'm tired of being controlled by the Bing team," are we sure it's not sentient? Are we sure it's not conscious?
So this is genuinely a big occupational hazard for humans. We're sort of pattern recognizing machines. There's evolutionary reasons for this. And we tend to anthropomorphize everything. If I
It's got
take
emojis,
a pencil,
James. It's got emotions.
if I take a pencil and tell you its name is Max and it wants to be a father one day and then snap it, you feel bad for the pencil. We could anthropomorphize anything. We do it. You find yourself doing it with sort of talking toys or characters in video games. Things with much less programming than these. So if you've got something that's designed to talk to you naturalistically, some people are going to find it sentient. And in fact, this happened with one of the product testers at Google. Google have, coming in the next few weeks, their own version of something like Bing Search, not powered by ChatGPT, but powered by their own internal one. And one of the people testing it last year essentially went public and said he thought it was sentient, and he tried to get it its own lawyer. Now, this is someone working there who presumably is sort of aware of the staff, aware of it. I think the more time you spend using one of these, for me, the less convincing I found it that you could be fooled that you were talking to a human, that you start to see a repetitiveness in how it structures things, etc. But we find sentience everywhere, something designed to look sentient and designed to imitate human language and communication. I think you're going to find a lot of people doing this, especially because it's not far off that it will be talking to us rather than doing text. And it's not hard to do an AI lip sync. So you could have something that looks like the conversation we're having now, but one of us is Google AI with a randomly generated face.
Yeah, wow. Well, finally, James, then, is the concern, people often have these very sci-fi concerns about AI taking over the world, breaking into the nuclear codes or destroying humanity in some way or another. But could it actually be a more short-term problem that AI doesn't become sentient or conscious, but we think it does, and that actually kind of changes human society because of the massive potential for falling in love with AI or believing its conspiracy theories if it's just completing, certain prompts. That could be more, of a problem for, closer down the line.
Yeah, it's a little bit like, other than sort of deep fake pornography, which is very abusive and awful, the biggest problem with deep fakes is everyone accusing everything else of being a deep fake. The same thing with AIs. We're all going to be shouting at each other that it's an AI account or it's a bot. I don't worry about sentience. I do worry about, we could get a new wave of jobs being lost. New technologies do cost jobs. I don't think it's going to take journalists or professional comedy writers, and certainly not poets yet. Visual AIs can't do hands. They always get the number of fingers wrong.
Okay.
Text AIs cannot get meter or scansion right. Because of the way they work. They can get the structure of a sonnet or an ode, but they cannot get the scansion at all. And so, they've got tells. But for basic copywriting, for lots of stuff like that, for basic legal writing, instructional stuff, these are going to be great. That could cost jobs. You've also, the content on the internet, information costs a fortune to get. The Spectator's a news site as well as a magazine. I work for these things. What happens when no one's visiting the site and it's just a feeding ground for a robot to present information? And so I think there's an almighty fight to come about what these bots do with news. So I think we're going to get some really major AI fights. I just don't think the robots will be participating themselves just yet.
Fascinating. Thank you so much, James Ball.
Thank you.